Hello everyone, welcome to this lecture where we're going to be talking about dictionaries in Python. Dictionaries are basically an unordered mapping of storing objects. So in our previous lecture, we've seen how lists can store objects in an ordered sequence. Dictionaries actually uses a key value pairing instead. What do I mean by this key value pair? This key value pair basically allows users to quickly grab objects without needing to know an index location. You can imagine how frustrating it's going to be if you were to access thousands of list items and you have to start looking for the index number before you can grab a particular item. So that can be pretty much frustrating, and dictionaries actually solve that problem, whereby instead of you looking for an index number location, all you need to do or all you need to know is to know the key of the value that you're looking for. So once you know that key, you can basically have access to that value anytime when you want to access it. Now let's look at the syntax of how dictionaries work. Unlike list, which list uses a square bracket, dictionaries use a curly brace and colons to signify the key and their associated values. So what do I mean by this? So if you take a look at this example right here, you can see that we have a curly brace, which basically signify the opening of the dictionary. And you can see right here that we also have a closing curly brace, which signify the closing of the dictionary also. And inside the dictionary, we have a key and a value. So as you can see that we have a key right here, which in this case is named key 1 and is pointing to a value 1. That means that whenever we want to access value 1, as far as we have key 1, we can go ahead to actually access this value 1. I hope it pretty much makes sense. Now, if we want to print out value 2, all we need to also have is to have the word key 2. Once we have the key, we are going to be able to access it. So when is the best time to actually use a list than a dictionary, or a dictionary compared to a list, right? We need to actually know that. And basically, dictionary stores objects and retrieve them by their key name. So it's usually unordered and it cannot be sorted. Whereas list basically retrieve its objects based on its location, and they are ordered sequence that can be indexed or sliced, which is one key thing you should also take note of. So with that being said, now that we already know what dictionaries are, how to create them, and the difference between dictionary and list, let's pretty much jump into our notebook right now and get our hands dirty with dictionaries just to understand how it works better. Alright guys, I'm in my notebook now and we've been majorly learning about sequence in Python, but now we are going to switch this up a bit, right? We're going to switch gears and we're going to learn about mapping in Python, right? If you are familiar with other languages, you can think of these dictionaries as a hash table, right? So what are we going to learn in this section? First, we're going to learn how to construct a dictionary. Then moving forward, we're going to learn how to access objects from a dictionary. Then we'll look at how we can also nest dictionary, like how we nested our list objects, right? And lastly, we're going to look at the basic dictionary methods that we have, all right? So if you want to access the notebook, don't forget to check the description box below. I'm going to be including the notebook to the GitHub repo so you can follow up step by step in case you miss out on anything, all right? So first thing first is I'm going to go ahead to construct a dictionary. And how do I do that? So remember, I mentioned that we have to use what? A key value pair. So I'm going to create a variable right here. It's going to be called my underscore dict. And I'm going to access it to some bunch of keys and values inside these curly braces. Don't forget, right? So the first thing first is we need to have the key. So for this example, we have key 1 and I'm going to assign it to a value of value 1. We also have key 2 and I'm going to assign it to a value of what? Key 3. Now, of key 2 rather. Now, take note of how I'm using the semicolon to assign the values to them. So that's how you normally assign values in Python, right? Through the keys and the value. Now, let's run this. Now, if we want to access this value right here, how are we going to do that? Don't forget, you have to use what? My underscore dict. And inside a square bracket, I'm going to specify what? Keys. So key 2, for example, let's say we want to access this value 2. All right. So yeah, I'm supposed to write value 2 rather. Let me correct that. And I'm going to run this again. Very good. So right here, I'm going to say my underscore dict. I'm going to access this key 2, which I should get a what? A value 2 for, right? So if I go ahead to run this cell, you can see right here, I'm going to have a value 2, right? So it's important to know that dictionaries are very flexible, right? just like our list can contain an integer, a floating point number, or a string, dictionaries are also flexible in their data type and they can hold different data types, right? So for example, let's say we have something like my underscore dict, right? I'm going to assign it to be equals to a curly brace, right? Open and close it. And here I'll have what key one. And this key one is going to have a value of 1, 2, 3. I'm also going to have like key two. And this key two, now the spacing does not matter. You can as well leave space if you want to, just to make your code neater. But if you don't like leaving space, it's fine. So my key two, I'm going to assign it to a list. You're going to see what I'm saying is very flexible. So I'm going to say 12, let's say 23, and I will say 33, comma, and I'm going to assign a key three right here. So this key three is going to be also a list. And let me close my curly brace back, right? And here I'm going to assign it to, let's say, item one. We can have item two here also. And let's just say we have item two. Let me just say item one, item one. I'll put 0 right here. 0, then item one. All right. Very good. Now, if I run this cell and let's say I want to check what I have in key three, the values I have in key three, all I can do is I can say my underscore dict, and I'll just put this square bracket. Remember, that's how we access elements. And here I'm going to say access key three. And here you're going to see that we have what? Item one, item two, and item three. So how about if we want to go ahead to grab the first item right here? I can say my underscore dict, and here I'll say access what? Key three. And we want to also take in the first item right there, which is what? 0, right? So if I run this, you're going to see that we get what? Item 0 out, right? So I can also say, let me just do some basic simple methods right here. I can say, okay, my underscore dict, and I want to take in key three. I want to take in the 0 index, and yeah, I can just do a simple method dot upper. Remember what does upper does for us? So if I run this, you're going to see it's going to return what? Item in capital letter, then 0. Very good. You can also access the key one, right? So you can say my underscore dict, and yeah, I'm going to say access key one. Yeah, we're going to do some basic arithmetic operations right here. And for example, let's say we want to perform some arithmetic operations right here. I can say that my underscore dict, and I'll say key one. So let me put my string. Let me forget that. And right here, I'm going to say is equals to my underscore dict. And I'll say here key one minus 1, 2, 3, right? Performing those simple arithmetic operations. And if I run this, it basically means that what I did right here is I'm assigning my key one, which is 1, 2, 3, to be a new value of this my key one minus 1, 2, 3, which is going to be 0, right? So if I go ahead to run my underscore dict, and yeah, I just say key one, you will see that now we now have 0. So that's how you can do some basic arithmetic operations in your dictionaries. So a quick note is Python has built-in methods of doing self-subtraction, addition, or multiplication, or even division, and you can always do well to check it out. You could have even done something like plus equals to or minus equals to. So let's quickly do that right here. Let me just show you guys how it works. For example, I could have done something like my underscore dict, then I'll say yeah, or specify key one, and I could have said minus equals to 1, 2, 3. And if I go ahead to now check out my underscore dict, then I check out my key one, we're going to get what? Minus 1, 2, 3, because we're basically subtracting minus 1, 2, 3 from 0. We're going to get minus a negative value right there. All right, so I just wanted to point that out to you guys. And you can actually create a dictionaries by making them empty first, and later on you can go ahead to assign them values. For example, I can have something like let's say D, which is going to start from my dictionary. In this case, it equals to an empty dictionary. And later on, if I want to add like a key and a value to it, I can say D, and I'll say it should have a key of what? Animal. And I'm going to assign it to be equals to dog in this case. I'll run the cell and let's assign another value again. I can say D and I will say answer. In this case, I will say equals to, let's say, 42. I'll run it. And if I go ahead to check what I have in D, if I say D, you can see right now that we have a dictionary which now contains animal, which is dog, and answer, which is 42. Now that we have that in place, let's talk about nesting a dictionary. Remember in our list lecture, we talked about how you can nest list item. So for this one, we're going to talk about how we can also nest dictionaries. It's very, very important, especially when you're working with large data sets. You have to know how to destructure dictionaries very well. You have to know how to access dictionaries item very well, and you're also going to take some exercises which is going to actually tax you, so get prepared for that also. So right here I'm going to say D is equals to, and I'm going to just create a bunch of dictionaries right here. Here I'm going to say key one, and also this key one is inside the dictionary again, and this dictionary is going to have a nest key, and this nest key is going to be assigned to a value of dictionaries again, right? And here I'm going to say sub nest key, just to know that it's a subnested key. So here also I'm going to have value. So now don't get confused. What's going on right here? We have this first dictionary, and this first dictionary has this opening curly brace and this closing curly brace. We also have this key one, which this is the value of this key, right? The value of this key is this. Very good. Now inside this value we now have another key again, which has this value of what? Sub key and value. And inside here again, we now have something interesting, which is a sub nest key that has this value in it. All right. So now let's go ahead to run the cell. And now let's try to access this item right here, which is what? The value. Let's see how we can print that out. So first thing first is I'm going to say D, then I'm going to access the what? Key one. So if I run this cell, you will see that currently we have what? We have nest key and sub nest key and this value. But we're trying to get to this value. But we can't access this value if we don't have the master key, which is what? This nest key right here. So I'm going to go ahead and run the what? I'm going to say run the nest key here, right? So print out the nest key. And if I run this right here, you can see right now that we now have this subnest key and this value. So to grab hold of this value, what we can do now is just to access this key right here, subnest key. So I'm going to say subnest key. So if I go ahead to run this cell, sorry, let me close um my string and I'm going to run it again. And here you can see that we now have what? Value. Very good. So that's pretty much how nesting in dictionaries work. You can do well to create more complex nesting and try to play around with it and see if you can actually access the item. So lastly, let's talk about methods in dictionaries. So there are a few methods we can call on a dictionary. So let's get a quick introduction to a few of them. All right, so I'm going to go ahead to create a new dictionary and I'm going to name this D and have some key and values inside of this dictionary, right? And here I'll have key one, right, as usual, and this is going to be assigned to one. I'm also going to have key two, and here I'm also going to assign it to 12. And I'm going to have, lastly, I'm going to have key three, and I'm going to assign it to 3 right here. So I'm going to run this cell. So the first method I'll be telling you guys about is the keys, right? So I can say d.keys. So I can actually check shift tab before running this. So you can see that what it does is it's a set like object providing a view of the keys, right? So what it means is going to return the keys of the dictionaries that we have there. So you can see that the dictionary keys that we have here is what? Key 1, key 2, and key 3, right? We can also do d.values. I'm sure you should have guessed that right already, right? So if I do d.values and I run this cell, you can see it's returning the values of what we have in the dictionary, which is what? 1, 12, and 3. Next is you can also do d.items, and basically what it does is going to return the dictionary's item that you have. You can see we have key 1, 1, key 2, 12, then key 3, which is 3. So I hope you guys understood how dictionaries work in Python. Please, if you do not, do well to watch the video again to understand, or ask questions if you have any, because dictionaries is one of the fundamentals that you need to know, especially if you want to work in the web dev industry, the data science or data analysis. You're going to be making use of dictionaries a lot. So with that being said, that will be the end of this lecture. And in our upcoming lecture, we're going to talk more about tuples. So see you in the next lecture. Bye bye.